Grow Great is a city government leadership podcast with Lisa Norris and me, Randy Cantrell. Each week we share insights, experiences, and wisdom to help you and your leadership grow great. Our website is growgreat.com.
Okay, so we're pulling back the curtains. Typically, our listeners love this, Randy, where we're just going to talk about us for a little bit, and work may come into it, work may not come into it, but I certainly feel we have a lot of listeners that are go, oh yeah, I get it. That's happening here too. So and I don't think my mom would mind me talking about this, but so she's in long-term care. For those of you that have been on this journey with the podcast with us for over 2 years now, I believe, Randy. Yep. I'd have to look back, but I think we're over 100 and something episodes. We have talked about this journey of life where I've had dealing with my dad who had Alzheimer's, was in a memory care unit. He recently passed in September of 23. And then my mom, who also had long haul COVID, had nearly lost her life and has been recuperating, had a mini stroke in January of 23, I think it was, maybe 22. I don't remember the timing, but then is in assisted living over this past year. She's up for her annual assessment. We're meeting with the nurse who comes out. This is yesterday. And she's talking through all her doctors that she has that, I'm the medical power of attorney and her daughter. So I'm thinking I have great knowledge to share.
You've got the inside track.
I've got the inside track on this. I am good to go. I'm a smart cookie and I know where we're at. She's been in this assisted living. And all of a sudden she says, Lisa, I can't remember what she doesn't. She doesn't remember all of her doctor's names because she's got a lot of them for all the needs she has post-COVID. She goes, they're in the box over there. Go grab them. They're all stuck in this corner. So I go over to the box and while the nurse is waiting and they're chatting and I pick up cards. And as I'm bringing the cards back, she said, let me think about this. I've got my blah, blah doctor. I've got my primary care doctor. Oh, and there's my oncology doctor. Well, if you can see my face, I'm looking at her like, what? And she's like, I said, Mom, when did you see an oncology doctor? And the nurse is like, ooh, somebody has something to say. She's like over there looking at us. And Mom looks at me. She goes, oh, well, you're so busy. And I just don't want to worry you. And it's just, it's been like 6 months. I see them every 3 months, but I don't understand what they're saying. I'm like, okay, this is getting better by the second. And so anyway, she's like, oh, it's something to do with, I don't know. There's some markers that showed up in my blood for cancer. And my doctor said it could be blood cancer, but it's some gene or protein in my blood. And I don't really understand it. And didn't seem like it was a big deal. So I didn't want to bother you with it. Well, okay, now this news, and I'm trying to act neutral in front of this nurse I don't know. And so I said, okay, let's go ahead and go on with this conversation. And Mom, we'll have a chat tonight. How about that? So life, right? Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking we are rocking along. She is improving, still has cognitive issues, still has a reason we want her to stay there for her safety. And I'm thinking I'm this great daughter that knows everything. Well, clearly there's a gap here in knowledge and the trust circle has diminished somewhat. So anyway, it just sparked the conversation of when you think life is rolling well, then all of a sudden, life gives you lemons. And so I came back to work and Cheryl immediately, my boss, deputy city manager, she said, how'd your mom's assessment go? I said, well, pretty good with the exception of the cancer markers that came up that I didn't know about. And she goes, oh no, and so, but you just move on. You just take it in stride. I called her last night and said, okay, tell me about these cancer markers. And she goes, I just don't think it's a big deal, but this is what it's called. It was called MGUS. And so I had to look up, I'd never heard of that. And she had the right words. It's a protein in your blood that can develop into cancer, but it says it's often it doesn't impact the person, but it can develop. So it has to be watched, which is about what she said. Like she didn't think it was a big deal. When I read it, doesn't sound like it's huge, but it needs to be watched.
Yeah, but
And
you hear oncologist and you're like, wait a minute, what?
well, yeah, and she didn't tell me about it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, there's
I
that.
told her, I said, Mom, I'm never too busy. Like, I'm never too busy to listen and understand what's going on in your life, because I don't ever want, and I've even had people that say that at work. They're like, you're so busy, we don't want to, and I'm like, people are never a bother to me. Relationships are everything. So anyway, I got some work to do as a daughter that I need.
Well,
I need to figure this out.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, I think for me the bigger thing, because when you first told me that story, which was right before we hit record, so Grand Prairie, Texas, Lisa and her boss Cheryl initiated some years ago a leadership development kind of a course, and it culminates in a graduation ceremony. And prior to the finale of the graduation ceremony, there involves a sharing exercise. And by this point, this group, they've been in a room together 5 other times at least, maybe 6. And so it's a comfortable space, it's a safe space, and people will stand up and they'll share something. And
we call it our baggage. Everybody brings baggage.
Yeah, and every time, I mean, here's the leadership lesson in all this while we're pulling the curtain back. We're all people. We're humans, and we got stuff. We've all got stuff. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we're painfully unaware. We're aware of our stuff, as well we should be, but we're completely unaware of the stuff that other people have. And I'm always, anytime I'm in that room and I listen, and anytime there's an exercise like that, and you listen and you look at these people and you're like, I have no idea. No idea. I mean, how would you? And it's not like we want to come to work and we want to just unload our bags on our coworkers or our bosses, but it does speak to the point that, and we've seen that meme, mm-hmm. You just have no idea what battle some people are fighting.
Right.
You have no idea sometimes the health challenges that people are battling, perhaps the relationship difficulties and challenges that somebody's fighting, the financial stress and strain that somebody's fighting, the children dilemmas that many people are fighting. And every day they're coming to work, and I'm often very surprised, not shocked so much anymore, but surprised at especially the high performers that come in and you're like, and you just have no idea. Yeah. You just have no idea. They hit the door and they've got a good disposition and they've got a good attitude and they just knock it out and they just do their stuff. And meanwhile, at home, there's just this train wreck of things that they're dealing with. Yeah.
And it's a powerful exercise for the audience, because to understand just in simple terms what he's talking about and why this is so powerful about the baggage is we have them write on pieces of paper what the one thing that's heavy on their mind. That's how we kind of frame it. And then they all take them and dump them in a Walmart bag. And we call it, it's a compassion baggage exercise. And then randomly you have everybody draw those out and they read it out loud. And the option is you can own it. Whoever's that is can own it and share, or they don't have to say anything. But Randy, we've done this now, I think 3 times. Mm-hmm. Every time, 3/4 of the participants are in tears.
The vast majority of people. So
whether they share or not, or own anything or not, they are in tears because they can relate. That's the challenge.
Yeah, even just whatever's written on that card is going to impact the group, even though the person who wrote it may not acknowledge that they wrote it. But more often than not, in my experience, more often than not, somebody raises their hand, they stand up and say, yeah, that's mine.
Yeah,
that's mine.
And they share, and it's heavy. It's like, I'm trying to be a good father through a divorce and losing, their mom, or I'm, my so-and-so has cancer and they're at end of life and I'm just trying to make it through every day, Yeah. I mean, you just hear these things, and the whole point of the lesson And like you talked about, Randy, is you don't know what baggage they're bringing to work with them when they're just trying to get through that day. And high performers, I assure you, are trying not to share everything. They're just trying to make sure they don't let somebody down at work, because
they're not sharing everything.
no.
I can tell you.
And you have to, we always talk about from a compassion standpoint, which is where this applies, with me dealing with this oncology thing, and I'm laughing about it, but it's one more thing in life. And I'm like, okay, that's now on that you talk about spinning plates. I'm like, okay, I'm figuring out an Oklahoma residence. I'm figuring out how I'm going to live here. I'm figuring out my mom's house is splitting apart.
Yeah.
You're worried about always the success of your children and how am I going to engage with the grant. And so I've got all these plates that I'm spinning. Well, now I add an oncology plate to no more fingers that I have left, or a foot or a hip. I don't have anywhere to put it. So what's coming off of that? Which plate is falling at this point? But it's the same thing through this compassion exercise. It's everybody's dealing with something, and it's significant. These were not little things. These were significant, the entire room. Don't you agree?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
This isn't little like, hey, I'm trying to decide if I'm going to cook spaghetti for dinner or
no,
tacos.
these were life-changing things. My own illustration. So I get invited to go do a keynote last year. I don't do many of these because frankly I hate to travel, but I drive down to San Antonio, and it's some city government group, and I'm asked to keynote this particular day, and I'm in the car. And the day before, Rhonda and I were awaiting pathology. She had some kind of suspicious lump in her breast, and we lost her mother the first year of our marriage. We've been married going on, it'll be 47 years in January. And so that was a long time ago. And her mother was like 42. So it's in the gene pool. And so she's been very fanatical to stay on top of it. And we weren't going to have the pathology. She knew she had worked for a pretty high-end breast cancer surgeon here in Texas, a female doctor. And she had Dr. Bryan remove. She said, I just want it out. I don't want to do a biopsy, a needle biopsy. Now forget it. We're talking a small, but it's cancer. I mean, if it's cancer, the smallness doesn't matter. She said, I just want it out. So she had the surgery, had it removed, and of course, now we await the pathology. And I have to drive down to San Antonio. I got to get up on this stage in front of hundreds of people, and we don't know the outcome. Well, I'm completely preoccupied. I know what I want to say to this group and what I want to convey. I'm up all night. I'm fretful. I'm not fretful about getting up on the stage. I'm not. That ain't a problem. But I'm fretful about we're supposed to get the pathology report tomorrow, the day of my speech. And so this is a group of people. I might know a handful of people in this audience. This is largely a group of strangers to me, and I am to them. And so I just leveled with them. So I got this whole room of strangers, and I just said, I'm distracted today. And I got some little rolled up, thing of paper, kind of like this, if you're watching the video. And I've just scribbled a few things down. I don't ever do that. I get up on a stage in front of people. And I don't have a laptop. I don't have a PowerPoint. I'm just talking. It's how I roll. And I said, I don't do this, but I said, I'm calling an audible because I'm distracted. And so I told him what I just told you. And I'm not doing it for effect, but in the middle of it, it dawns on me, I've got instant compassion. And so I built on that. And I said, y'all don't know me. Most of you guys don't know me from Adam. But I said, I've already got your compassion. You've already put a focus on me, which is compassion's a focus on others. You're not thinking about yourself. You're thinking about me, and you're thinking about my wife, who you haven't seen and you'll probably never meet. And I went on and tried to build on it. And as with all of my keynotes, if I can't have Q&A at the end of it, I just don't agree to do it. So we had about 20 minutes of Q&A and just trying to help these people with their specific stuff. And at the end of this thing, I mean, the line was just ridiculous. I mean, I got hugged by more strangers that day than I've been hugged by in a long, long time. So it does prove a point, I think, this pulling back the curtain and this showing our humanity. It's not a selfish endeavor. I didn't feel like it was selfish for me to share that with these people. Hopefully that was an impactful, whatever I said, I can't remember, but I hope it was impactful and it made some point come home to them. And I think it does. I think it does. Now, we all know that person that they're constantly filled with complaints and it's woe is me all the time. We're not talking about that.
No.
We're just
talking about genuine moments.
Yeah. Just sharing our humanity, and it's not lost on me and Lisa. We are where we are with this podcast because of you. Because you're watching, because you're listening, because we occasionally hear from you, and that's not lost on us.
Right.
And it's not lost on us that you've got your own challenges at work, and you've also got your challenges at home, whatever they may be. And not that it's anybody's business. We're not probing. We're not breaking confidences or anything like that. But as leaders, I think there's big power in us just showing whatever that looks like for you, whatever you're comfortable doing. Some people are not comfortable at all. Others of us are more of an open book, and I wouldn't judge it. You know, you do you. Mm-hmm. And I think we just need to be the best version of ourselves that we can be. And I think sharing that stuff lets people kind of in on it. I think it's helpful.
Had to do that, Randy, is, one of the things I had asked our HR team several years ago was, what do we need to do better as a team? What can we do to make us stronger? And I had gotten back at that time, just building camaraderie and really getting to know people. And this was it had kind of started in the midst of COVID when we all, I'm sure all of you listeners had the same thing where we all had to work from home because they didn't know COVID. It was taking people down. Thousands and thousands were dying. And we were before we knew to mask, before we knew quarantine. This was all at the kind of this early stage where we're all working at home, those that could. I was in a setting where we could work from home and do our work. And so we were all working from home, and you lose touch quickly. And so one of the things the team said, I was asking them, because mental health became a huge crisis during that time for not only children, because they were losing their connections by being out of school, but also parents having to deal with kids at home and balance work and balance people dying in their family. And so one of the things we started was these Feel Good Fridays. And as we started Feel Good Fridays, it was just an hour, our team, we had 14 of us, and we got on a call together. And I said, this is not going to be about work. This is going to be a time I need everybody on the call. And this is a time our team lifts each other up, understands each other. We're going to have light topics. We're going to have heavy topics. It's going to vary each week based on what's come up for that week and what I feel is relevant for us to just get it out and talk about it. And it evolved. I started very lighthearted intentionally. We favorite vacation, but we had never talked about this as a team. So simple a concept, never talked about it. And, I told them, just be succinct, because there's 14 of us and we've got an hour. It doesn't have to go an hour, but we've got an hour slotted. And we started sharing, and then they started sharing pictures. And then I said, okay, favorite pet, was the next one. And then it evolved. And I started out the concept with this statement of trust. I said, there's got to be trust here. If you guys walk away from this virtual meeting and talk about what somebody else said, this will never work. We will have broken trust. So right now we need to agree as a team that this is a time we lift each other up and not break each other down. And it will not work if we cannot agree to that basic concept. And of course, everybody agreed. And I said, I expect this from one another, and you need to expect it from one another as well. And so as it progressed, I got to this one, Randy, like you said, and it was, what's on your mind today was one of the topics. What's on your mind today that is distracting you? And of course, before we even started getting words out, tears started flowing. You could see it on everybody's faces. And it was, I mean, I had everything from substantial child mental health issues to family issues to me putting my dad in a home and my mom breaking down because she feels like she's letting him down, and then me trying to lift my mom up, and then trying to, my husband was quitting work at the time. I mean, there's all these things, and you get it out, and there's this sense of relief, and people are crying and just coming on and saying, we love you, we support you, let us know what you need, even though we're at a distance. I mean, that's the start of the feelings that started. And that evolved to, once COVID started, we coming back into work, we did it less frequently. We did it less frequently. And then we started doing once a month, and we moved it to Thursdays, and it was Thoughtful Thursday. And we just talk about that stuff. But all that to be said, this is important that you know your people. And if you as a team and our listeners are not, if you truly, your team doesn't know each other, you're not getting the absolute level of support for one another that you could, the camaraderie that you can build by having not just know your team members, but your team members knowing each other. They start learning about these little favorite cakes, favorite snack. I mean, it changed everything we did. We talked about favorite snacks, and it was chips and dips for like 80% of them. So for our next birthday, somebody said, well, instead of birthday cake, we want to bring our favorite dips and chips. And people are like, that's a great idea, because now it's on your mind and a connection. And then somebody brought homemade like guacamole, and they're like, this is amazing. And they're like, oh, it's so easy. You want my recipe? And I'm like, how about we recipe swap for next month? They're like, that's a great idea. And it's just this, it evolved itself organically. And we really became a much more unified, solid team through genuine sharing, through open dialogue, and non-work related items, that what's going on in somebody's life, what's important to them, what's not, what they dislike and what they like. And then we went over pet peeves. And I had teammates going, I had no idea I drove you that crazy. And they're like, well, I wasn't exactly talking about you, and they're like, you were talking, that's clearly what I do every day, and they're like, well, but I mean, we can make it better, and they're like, yes, absolutely. I'm sorry I've driven you crazy. I mean, it was just these simple conversations that are so powerful. And I would tell you as a leader, if you're not doing that, it doesn't matter the level, executive, your own team, a crew, take time to have a little fun and talk about, you need to think about how you're going to administer it, because it does matter of how you start that. You have to develop trust. If you just started out and you go deep on the first one, it's not going to work, because they don't know if they can share or not. But as it went on, I mean, they started sharing pictures in the chat, and we would have these laughing till we cried sessions. Somebody told a story about when they were in Mexico and got lost, and it was just a huge comedy of errors, and we were just hysterically laughing by the end of it. But those kind of things, man, they make a difference. And if you understand and be compassionate about that, what a difference it makes in the world of a team.
Thanks for watching and listening to Grow Great, a city government leadership podcast. For Lisa Norris, I'm Randy Cantrell. Be well, do good, grow great. The website is growgreat.com.